Today we are going to see Introduction to Formalistic Approach. Formalistic approach is also called aesthetic approach, textual approach, ontological approach, most frequently neo-criticism. In Coleridge's view, literary piece exists in its own way with its own kind of life, and his concept of organic unity is the whole being, the harmonious involvement of all the parts to give a unified meaning. T.S. Eliot is a major figure in the development of formalistic criticism or neo-criticism. He was influenced by Pound and Hume. He announced the high place of art as art instead of an expression of social, religious, ethical, or political ideas, and advocates close study of the texts of the work themselves. In Tradition and Individual Talent, he pronounced his dictum that the poet escapes into the poem from emotion and personality. He was concerned to formulate a kind of criticism that would be free of the pursuit of intrinsically historic, moral, psychological, and sociological interpretations and free to concentrate on the aesthetic quality of the work. According to Eliot, a poem is overflow of powerful feelings. A second great guide is I.A. Richards laid the foundation of the semantic approach. Richard cleared the arena for the later occupation of by the new critics, but probably his fundamental contribution was in his investigation of meaning, which led on the one hand into semantic, the science of signs and sign interpretation, and on the other into the scrupulous explication of poems as illustrated by the work, for example by Emerson and Blackmer. New critics are best defined by their common beliefs, attitudes, and practices, tangential to an understanding of the poem, and to concentrate on the structure of each poem or an element of that structure as they relate to the total poetic experience. Robert Penn Warren, in Pure and Impure Poetry, does not inhere in any particular element, but depends upon the sets of relationships, the structure which we call the poem. Critics examine these elements in their interconnections, assuming that the meaning is made up of matter of form and matter of content, working not separately but together. The closeness of reading he has become the signature of the new criticism. The limitations of the formalistic approach. The most tangential disapprobation is by clinkishness of the tactics and their tendency to develop a terminology that approaches jargon, thereby excluding those who are not initiated members of the society. The special vocabulary has permitted some with insufficient imagination or taste to ride the bandwagon. R.S. Crane protested Brooks' paradox or of Ranson's texture, Tante's tension, or Ibsen's ambiguity as the sole principle of poetry. L.C. Knights and F.R. Davies accused Emerson and Richards that they have isolated one part of the work of art for examination, forgetting the poem as a totality. The charge the charge is the values of literature to man as more than aesthetic being have been neglected in favor of the analysis of form. T.S. Eliot, the ontological approach, can establish the literary quality of a work, but that other methods are necessary to determine its greatness. He is concerned with the formal aspect of art when he writes closely of particular pieces and with the philosophic values of art in his R.S. Crane says or prompts some attention to opposing between formalistic and the Chicago School of Poetry. According to him, they are irrecognizable antagonists, both chiefly concerned with internal analysis of the work of art, eschewing social, moral, philosophic, and personal material as irrelevant. Both insist on close textual study. Chicago's critics have a strong plea for a basic aesthetic of an Aristotelian sort, in order to differentiate between species of works of art and to deduce the rules of each particular kind accordingly. Crane describes the method as one which seeks to appraise a writer's performance in a work in relation to the nature and requirement of the particular task he has set himself, the end being perfection of the work as an artistic whole of the special kind he decided it should be. Formalistic critics examines the total poem without proper regard for the species of which it is an example, thus failing to distinguish between the broad genres, drama, novel, lyric, epic, or between subspecies, one kind of tragedy, mimic, as opposed to another perhaps didactic. A second point of disagreement, Chicago critics charges the ontological writers with monism. He himself is prepared to welcome social, moral, historical aspects of the work after analyzing of the parts and their propriety according to the rules of the species, as of value is recognizing the supra-aesthetic significance of the experience. W. K. Wimsatt says, when poetry is valued dealing with species, genre, and subspecies, it would tend to blind the critics to the elements that are operating in the literary work when they are not required by the species. He arraigns the neo-Aristotelian for going outside the poem not to history or psychology or morality, but to a theory of genre. This leads to intentional fallacy of the author. This formalistic approach has many brilliant practitioners like Ibsen, Blackmer, Tate, Ransom, Kenneth Brooke, Robert Penn Warren. All these are best known, but there are many others who have contributed essays to periodicals with equal rigor and insight.